Good morning. Still, I think for everyone, we are talking about food, just lunchtime now. So I hope we don't get too hungry. We are here with Niklas. We are going to be talking about the connection between identity and food. And to be honest, I'm Ichazo. I'm a venture capitalist. I invest in B2B SaaS. That means like cloud infrastructure, Internet of Things, AI, and you will be wondering, what is she doing talking about this topic? That was my question too, when they asked me to be here. And they were like, what are you talking about? You are the person who is more obsessed about what you eat and when you eat it, which is very important, and you know exactly what time of the day and which combination of things, and that is true. So I have a huge interest in this topic personally, so I've been reading a lot about it. But hey, this is, in fact, we have here a real expert, Niklas, and we are going to be having a conversation about this topic, and I will open to questions towards the end to the audience. But Niklas, why don't you do a quick introduction of yourself? You tell us about Naturally, and then we go to more the topic of the...
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here and to talk about something that we all, I think we have opinions on, because we all eat, right? We eat normally three times a day, and it is the business with the biggest turnover in the world. So it is something that we all can have our opinion on. I'm Swedish. I lived in Madrid now for 25 years, which is a long time. I came here to basically set up my company actually when I came 25 years ago, but that was nothing to do with food. My food company, Naturally, we started about 5-6 years ago. And Naturally, the name of my company is a company that we try to do food that is as natural as possible, as little processed as possible. Because, as you know, today there is a huge issue in the world that we eat too much processed food. So basically we do chocolates, we do all kinds of snacks, we do granolas for breakfast, etc., with as little, with no sugar, no gluten, no lactose, etc.
Nice, amazing. Why did you start doing this?
Okay, so yeah, so the origin of the company, you could say, probably, I mean, I've always been passionate about food, but I'm also a celiac, so I'm gluten intolerant. I cannot eat, I cannot have wheat. And I think that is what actually brought me into the food, being interested in food. Because as a kid, when you cannot eat what others eat, you need to like figure out, you need to find your own ways of eating. And when I was a kid in the 70s, there were no gluten-free products at all, basically. So I started experimenting with my grandmother in the kitchen. We made our own bread, our own cookies, etc. And actually, that is something that is coming back to me now, because we are developing these gluten-free products and sugar-free products. And actually, just 3 weeks ago, we launched our cookies, gluten-free cookies with no sugar, and we sweetened them with chicory root and with dates. And it's super interesting to be actually experimenting in the kitchen again, because that's what I do, experiment in the kitchen.
Amazing. I can't wait to try them. Anybody in the audience? Naturally? Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Thumbs up. Yeah, amazing. Great. Good. Look at that. Oh my God, that's amazing.
I'm really happy to hear that. We are actually in Spain, Italy, and Portugal in retail, in Carrefour, El Corte Inglés, and outside these southern European countries, we are also at Amazon. So you can find our products more or less in all the European countries, but it's a little bit, it's harder.
That's really amazing. So I'm Spanish. I'm from Basque Country, from the north, but I live in London. And to be honest, every time I come here, I feel that Spain has been slowly getting into some of those food intolerances and becoming a little bit more friendly for people who have several requirements. But still, we have a way to go comparing with other countries. So great step on that. So look, let's get to the topic of the panel. And just to start, a quick introduction of myself. Around 10 years ago, I started changing a couple of habits in my food behaviors. I was already living in London. I've been there for 14 years, and I lived in California before. But I was in London, and so one of the first things I did was I stopped drinking. I stopped drinking alcohol. And the reason wasn't that I really didn't want to have a hangover, or it was that I was going to events like this, and you go, you drink, and the next day you're like, oh, I talked with that person. What was the name? You are trying to find that person, and you don't remember it. It's not that you were completely hammered, but hey, you don't remember that name. And that really bothered me. Going to an event, having a couple of beers, and then not being able to be incredibly productive next morning because your brain is slow, and in fact, you don't remember 100% of the things. And another thing I did is that I started putting MCT oil on my coffee in the morning. And I don't know if you read about this MCT oil, but basically makes you very awake and aware. And helps in productivity. And very quickly I realized that everything I was doing was not necessarily for health reasons, but rather because I am absolutely obsessed with productivity. So I wanted to be absolutely obsessed with productivity. So that's a little bit what they asked me about this panel. I'm like, okay, yes, there is certain identity behind that. Do you think there is, in fact, going to the topic, a connection between that identity and the food that we eat?
Totally. I mean, and it's so interesting what you just mentioned about alcohol, because I stopped drinking 10 months ago. And I don't want to be that, because when you start talking about alcohol, it's like immediately it gets very polemic. Because people, but I want my beer, I want my glass of wine. And I don't want to be the boring guy, telling that you should...
I've been that for 10 years, don't worry.
How many years?
10 years.
10 years, okay. and 10 months in my case. But honestly, at least I think you should try. If you haven't tried, just try to leave it out for a month, and you will see the changes in your life, because that's amazing. And I've never been a heavy drinker, to be honest, but just leaving out that glass of wine that you have in the evening, or that beer, and you will see how your sleep starts to improve, how you actually feel much clearer in your brain, and all that. There are so many benefits. But okay, we're not going to talk about that now. I just wanted to comment, because it is interesting. Okay, so identity and food, I mean, the last, I think, 10 years, with social media, with the globalization, etc., it's amazing how identity connects with what you eat. The cultural, I mean, you follow people on the other side of the planet, and you learn how to cook Asian, South American, etc. It is very much I mean, your identity can be formed, can be shaped in that sense. And I think it's so interesting.
And that's a good question, because then I started thinking, is it because I am a productivity freak that I'm having these food habits? Or are those food habits making me a productivity freak? So what comes first, do you think? Not sure if we have a science here, but do you think what comes first? This is the habits, is becoming vegan, and then you become you get certain identity behind that, or you have an identity and then you say, in fact, I'm going to be vegan now. I'm not sure. What do you think about that?
I think today there are so many identities, because one is, for example, you are from the Basque Country and I'm from Sweden, Northern Europe. We might be different ages. We might also be different socioeconomic groups. So depending on, and that actually is something very important when you find your identity within food. How much can you spend on your food? Because can you afford to have grass-fed beef? Can you afford to have pasture-raised chicken? Can you afford to have wild-caught fish, etc.? And if you know a little bit of food, you also know that all these real food or whole food is something that makes your body thrive. And we all know that processed food is something that we should eat less or maybe nothing at all of. So there are so many different ways of forming that, shaping that identity, and it has to do a lot with money. It does.
That's a very, very interesting point. In fact, that it's we need to touch here for sure. Let's talk a little bit about culture and the culture of food, right? Which is it is a very interesting topic. How has that changed over time, and how do you think that is impacting basically our almost identity in that sense, the culture of food?
Yeah. Okay. So the culture, on one hand, is I mean, it's amazing what we see in the world with globalization, that we can actually find cultures, different culture, and we can implement it in our own kitchen, right? On the other hand, the culture the last 10, 15 years has been, it's really something that we see. The cost of food actually is very flat. So what we pay for food today is what we paid 50 years ago, but there's been inflation. So in real terms, we actually spend less money on food today than before. And that has to do with the industrialization of food. More processed food means less expensive food. And that also has to do with the culture. And another thing with culture is that we have this huge issue, health issue today. Because in the US, 93% of the population has some kind of metabolic disease, which means overweight, cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer, basically those four. And in Europe, the same number might be 80%, more or less, which means that 4 out of 5 people have some kind of metabolic disease, which is crazy. And so why is that? Well, basically, it has to do with our lifestyle. And one of the most important lifestyle changes that we had in the last 50 years is what we eat. Of course, it's important to exercise is important, to be out in the sun is important, sleep is important, social networks, or friends and family to be with loved ones, also important. But food is probably the most important at all. And having all these processed food so close to us, that is hard to avoid. A lot of people do think that juices are good for you, that sugared yogurts are good for you in the morning. There are so many products that form our culture of food that are not good for us. But there is always economic interest behind.
100%, and I think we could even have a whole panel talking a lot about education and where to find the information, because obviously there is a lot of information going around. And in fact, I would like to touch, before we open to the questions, I would love to touch in a topic which is social media, which is definitely determining a lot on what we do and what we eat, and therefore what was the identity we are following, right? Obviously, I put MCT oil because there is this guy, whatever, in California, and he's talking about this bulletproof coffee, right? And I start reading about somebody else and those guys who maybe they don't eat, and it's something that I'm doing these days, and I started only 3 years ago, but has changed my life, only eating when the sun is out. Meaning you basically stop eating in winter at 6 p.m. And then if you don't drink and you don't eat after 6 p.m., then you are the social weirdo for sure. But hey, we live with that, so it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Who cares? You know, I sleep really well.
Yeah.
So, but that's what it is. But obviously, social media has a big impact, and it's very difficult to filter what are the things that we see. And basically, how do you think is social media impacting our eating behaviors, and therefore, as we were talking talking about our identity too.
Yeah, okay. Social media is doing a lot within the food, like within food all over the world. Everybody that has access to TikTok or Instagram knows that in your feed you have all these ways of cooking that you had no idea before. I mean, I have 4 kids, and 2 of them, 17 and 15 years old, they learn so much, and they actually teach me how to cook a Peking duck, for example, and I had no idea about that. And
great.
So the way you can learn so fast, you know, that's just amazing. But and then there's another thing that is going on social media. It creates these kind of groups of people. I mean, I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, I'm carnivore, and actually with mainstream media, if you follow like mainstream media channels, everything is like very everything goes in the line of what the food industry wants us to believe and wants us to think. And for example, the vegan, for me, like the vegan bubble, I call it the vegan bubble because I think it is a scam, and I think that those vegan products that are marketed as something healthy, most of them are really, really bad for you because they're, I mean, look at fake meat. You have a list of like, if you take a look at what fake meat really includes, it's like 60, 70 additives. That's not good for you. We need to realize that genetically we are Paleolithics. We have the same genetics as 15,000 years ago, and even 50,000 years ago. So to eat these kind of products that are highly, highly processed, that is not what we want. And social media actually can give us information that mainstream media does not give. So that's another thing with social media that I think is just amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting. What do you think about the polarization of those thoughts and based on social media?
There is a major polarization going on. Again, you need to keep in mind that economic interests are behind a lot of the information that you see online, but also on mainstream media. And this creates a polarization. Why? Well, because some people might think that the vegan products, like soy meat, for example, that's healthy for you. But then we have people like myself that I want to go back to whole foods. I want to go back to what we had that we ate at least 200 years ago. There were no refined sugar, no seed oils such as sunflower oil, soy oil, etc., and no additives. So basically those 3. And there were also, we did not see the refined carbs that we have today. The wheat, for example, that we have today is like 30 times more gluten than before. So, yeah, so this creates like a polarization between vegans, vegetarians, carnivores, not eating gluten, not eating that. And it is actually, sometimes it can get really like aggressive, what do you call it? It can get aggressive. And one thing actually that is about vegans is that, okay, you're vegan because you don't want to kill animals. But the thing is that 99% of vegans today, they eat these processed vegan products. And to get these, I mean, to create these products, you need soy, wheat, corn, rice, basically those from monocrops. And in a monocrop, you use pesticides, you use fertilizers that actually come from petroleum. And after a few years with monocrops, the soil is completely dead. So the thing is that, okay, vegan products, these processed products, they're not just bad for you and for your health, they're bad for the planet. That's very important to understand.
Yeah, so we are going back to education, in fact, in this case, right? And where do you find the right information? Because I think many of us probably want to do the right things for your health and for the planet too. And many times you don't even know, right? I count many times, and
many times you don't know actually where to go because
100%.
you don't know what to trust. What information should I trust?
Correct.
But then I think what is actually something that you could think about is that how did we eat 200 years ago? How did we eat, or maybe like 70 years ago? There were no monocrops with fertilizers and pesticides, and people were healthier. You know, that's
100%.
yeah.
I'm 100%
and
on
El
it.
País Vasco, in the Basque Country, you eat actually, in Spain in general, the food is really good because you have the meat, you have the fish, you have the seafood, vegetable, fruit.
It is, and it comes really, we are very close. You guys are very close. I live in London, so it's another story. You live very close to the source. It's just another story. Being a Basque person in London is suffering, means suffering. But hey, that's another thing. We have time for a couple of questions. Anybody? Yes, there was a very quick one here. Just speak up.
Yes. Excuse me. Thank you very much.
There is a microphone, in fact, helping you.
Thank you very much for this panel. I work in the consumer behavioral change industry, and we always talk about people. They say, "Oh, you can't change." Well, we don't agree with that. It's really basically lenses that you wear and choices you decide. So, kind of building a little bit on what you were just talking about. In Spain and in the Mediterranean areas, like considered the best diet maybe in the world. But how do you square with the fact that 1 out of 3 adolescents in Spain are overweight? What's going on with the identity, and what are the drivers are changing the identities that are causing our children in this country to be so much more obese compared to even Northern European countries? Yeah,
I totally agree. That is it's so sad to see that Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece, 25 years ago, child obesity didn't exist, and now it is actually accelerating. And the thing is that the traditional Mediterranean diet was amazing. Fish, meat, grass-fed meat, olive oil, etc. All that we know. But today's Mediterranean diet is not what it was. It's too much refined carbs, rice, potato, wheat. But we also have all these additives and the seed oils. Actually, the seed oils in Spain and the Mediterranean area, they are much cheaper. So instead of using olive oil, we use more of these seed oils.
But why do you think there's this change in the personality of the people who are the parents? Like, why are we going away from something that you're identifying correctly
that's a good
is so
question.
healthy?
Yeah, you know what?
Question,
the answer is the price. The answer is the price. And because it's so much cheaper to find oils that are not, for example, the oils. The olive oils that we can find, we want them to be extra virgin, cold pressed, etc. But they're too expensive. You have a family. Maybe you have a salary of 1,500. You will not reach until the end of the month buying those expensive oils. So you mix them, and probably you don't mix them at home, but the ones that you buy them from, they mix them, and then they are sold as healthy while they're not healthy. So the answer lies in the price. It's
I think price is definitely one of them. I think education is definitely a big one too. I do think that parents think that the more food they give to the kids, the better they will be. I mean, they can eat all you can eat, right? And then you definitely changes.
Totally.
There is one more, last one, very quickly. The killer question.
Thank you so much. So I just want to build on the trust sense, like how do we get our education right around food? Who do we trust? And so that's the challenge many people trying to solve. What do you think? Who should we trust? Or
Okay, that's such a hard question because we cannot even trust the information that we get from, for example, in Sweden we have this delegation. Part of the government. In USA they have the same. In Spain you have the same. But I don't remember the name in Spain. But anyway, so the information that they actually send out has proven to be wrong. So we cannot even trust that information. So when I get this question, I usually say, try to trust your own body. Listen to your body. If you have like juices in the morning, sugary yogurts in the morning, you have biscuits in the morning, okay, you get this sugar spike, and then you crash after 1.5 hours. Okay, that's not how you're supposed to feel. You're actually, if you have bulletproof tea or coffee in the morning, then you have this smooth energy for like 7 hours. You don't even need the breakfast. So my answer is trust yourself, but also trust what we always had. You know, what did we have 200 years ago? Did we have breakfast in the morning? Well, maybe we didn't. And that is another topic, to actually skip meals, fasting. That is something that is great. You don't need to eat 3, 4, 5 times a day. Our body can be days without eating anything.
Yep.
I don't know if that is an answer that you...
I will just add a quick thing on that. There are some websites which only publish scientifically proven results, and you should search for those. There are very few of them, but there are some of them that they drive you through the route of scientifically proven articles, and I think those are definitely the ones that I would probably say.
Yeah,
but I do think listening to your body is very important.
But also, I must say that a lot of these studies, you know, scientific studies, they are sponsored and they are financed by the food industry.
Yeah,
and there are always interests behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, thank you for the questions and thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you.